Hey everyone, One Big Boss here. As you can tell by the title of the video that you clicked on, we're talking The Last of Us, but more specifically, the first episode for The Last of Us TV show has come out, and honestly, it's good. It's really good. Like, I was a very big naysayer of this because you have to understand, someone like me who has grown up watching video games go into, like, movie form or of anything else, it's generally bad, okay? Like, it's pretty damn bad, but I will admit, this has kind of changed that. Now, I don't think it's the first movie to do this because we've had a lot of good, adaptations with video games. Not as much as I would have liked, but from time to time, we do get good adaptations. And so far, from what I'm seeing of the show, there seems to be a lot of love and care put into it, and that's what I'm kind of looking for this stuff. I'm really looking for, people that care about the property, the intellectual property, and I played the original Last of Us on the PS3 years ago when it came out, and then my PS3 crashed. Lost my PS3, I was playing Marvel vs. Capcom 3, and it crashed on me, and then I was just like, oh, well, I was kind of far in this, and I don't really want to start it again. And then I got the PS4 version for free when I bought the PlayStation 4. And so, yeah, I played it there. And honestly, this is a great game. It's a really good game. Got a great story. Gameplay gets a bit tedious at times. It's not as great, I think, as people like amp it up to be, but I still do really enjoy this game and the story that it tells. And I think for what we saw the first episode, I don't think we have much to worry about. Starting off the episode, honestly, was really interesting because it took place in, I think, 1968, and it was these scientists that were talking about, how a virus or a cold could just sweep the world and ruin it and stuff. And I'm like, okay, well, you're clearly, talking about, a certain pandemic that we all just like went through and lived through and everything. But it was interesting because, we got to see a little bit about the fungus, the virus of that turns people and does what it does. And props for getting the guy who was actually talking. He was like the real serious doctor on the show and everything like that. Many of you know him. His name's John Hannah, but he's famously known for the Mummy movies. That's what he's been in. And I was like, oh, I know that guy. And like that, he played a really good part in it. And I love the whole 1960s setup that they had. Like everything on that set was literally how stuff was done in the 1960s. If you've ever either lived during that era or you have done your research or you've seen like old talk show footage on YouTube about it, like everybody was smoking on sets back then. You could do that. And like, it was the cameraman, it was the hosts, it was everybody, everybody did that. And I loved the fact that it really felt like that style. And I'm thinking to myself, man, if this is how they're like putting much effort to make, this look like the 1960s, what's the rest of the show going to look like? So, they move ahead to the future, obviously present day, which they kind of change up the timeline. It's set in the early 2000s, like 2003. So, there's a lot of kind of stuff back then that is kind of like a little bit easier to work with and, make it look like that era. I mean, like from cell phones and such and TVs. It was interesting. And I think one of the best aspects about this show so far are the characters. I say that, a lot of people were really upset at the casting of like both Joel and Ellie. And for me personally, I was like, well, I mean, they kind of look the part. So that's fine by me as long as they kind of look like it. But the important thing is, how is their chemistry? And the chemistry is there, ladies and gentlemen. It's really there. And it's going to be on better display than I think even the games could do. And I know that a lot of people are going to be like, oh, what are you talking about? The games? Really? The game was better. It's like, no. Games like these are great because you could do so much in them, right? But when you look at it at the end of the day, you're still playing a video game. So you're only getting, interactions here and there for the most part, and subtle stuff during the gameplay too, obviously. But I think the way that the show is going and like how they've like brought these characters together, these are how these characters act when you're not playing as them, or like what they're going through in their daily day-to-day lives. And it works. I mean, when they skip ahead to the future and like, the bleak dystopian world and Joel's in Boston. I remember being in the Discord call and everybody else watching it, and I'm just like, oh, hey, look at that. That's Boston in general. They didn't have to do nothing. And like that's one of the things I loved about the show too, was the practical stuff that they did for it. Obviously there's special effects, but there's practical effects too, and I'm always a big fan of practical effects being in productions because it just makes everything look better, looks more real. You can use CGI and make things look real, but let's face it, a lot of companies don't do that these days. They rather cheap out and go the cheap route and everything and just do bare minimum for CGI sometimes. But honestly, I really love what they're building here in this world, and I think that the characters have all made a good impression. I think that they are these characters that you see here. I'm going to keep throwing this up and everything. Yeah, so if you get upset with that, I don't care. But, I think that these people are like into the characters. Now, granted, they weren't allowed to, research the characters. And I asked an actor buddy of mine if this was something that should be done. And he says, no, if there is a source material and this is established characters, especially very well-beloved characters, they should be allowed to study them. And you gotta kind of look at it as yeah, don't spoil it, because obviously when they film this stuff, they don't want the characters knowing how the ending is gonna go. But that's what actors do, man. Actors can know something's happening, and then they can pull something right from that. Okay, they access sad memories, they start crying on command and stuff. People have to understand how acting actually works. But I know Neil Druckmann's involved in it. I guess that's a little bit better. So for what we're seeing, for them not being able to play the games or anything like that, or watch the games, and study the characters, that's kind of a bummer. But with Neil on board, from what we've seen, it just works. The whole area of Boston and how even more bleak it looks than in the games. I mean, there was people literally being executed in public for breaking laws and stuff, because they don't want infections. They don't want people going out there and coming back infected and then spreading the spores and all that kind of stuff. And that's actually the kind of thing that does bug me a little bit about the spores being gone. So it seems that they have this fungi tendril coming out of their mouths and stuff, which kind of gave me some RE5 vibes with the how they did with the Magini in RE5, and I kind of liked it. I thought it was cool to see that in that first infected that we saw, and we knew that she was infected by being in that chair. We don't know how, but it was pretty cool, right? But that's the thing I'm kind of wondering about this. How did this actually happen if there are no spores? Spores were kind of the way that this stuff transferred from people to people, it seemed. And there's a scene where Tess gets freaked out by someone being, stuck to the wall, and had transformed and completely was just dead. And I'm thinking to myself, the spores were a big part, because you could do so much with the spores, kind of in Last of Us Part 2, where kick someone into a room or whatever, you rip their mask off, they start freaking off, and Ellie can take off her mask, and just she shows that she's not affected by it. You can watch people legit panic, because the spores, if you really look at it, are kind of a bigger how do I put it here? They're kind of almost a big of threat as the clickers themselves, because you could be in a safe area, drop down to an area, and all of a sudden, boom, spores are in the air, and then you're fucked. You're gonna become a clicker. And I actually loved seeing the infected before we jumped to present day, when it was in the past, and we saw that one neighbor's mother or whatever they were taking care of was super strong. Then we saw it on the streets. We saw how people were running through different areas and all that stuff. And I thought that was great. I thought it was so cool to see how fast and destructive they are, because they can see. This is before everything grows over their eyes, and it's all about sound for them. So that was kind of an extra layer of fear for people. And it's well, what was more dangerous, when they could see or when they become clickers? So very nice touch on that. Pedro Pascal, I knew was going to be great in this. People say, well, it doesn't look like Joel. I was yeah, he kind of does in many ways. I mean, honestly, they're doing fine. I feel they're doing fine with him. So, I think he's done a great job so far. I think he's absolutely incredible in what he does. I think he's portraying Joel, honestly, as Joel should be. And just when there's that one scene, where they're burning bodies, because that's what Joel's doing for work in this. He's burning bodies, and there's a certain thing that one person's I can't do it, and he does it, and it's for him, that's gut-wrenching for him to do, but he's got to do it. This is just a guy walking around who's a shell of his former self, and we saw how he was. He was very well portrayed before the pandemic. Him and his daughter and Tommy, all of them were very well acted together. You believe their chemistry. So I guess if you just really look at the rest of the world that The Last of Us is creating, and how it looks bleak, and from what we've seen in future features, there's really nothing to worry about at this point. I think this show is going to be good. I think the whole run of it is going to be great. I think that with Neil on board, like, you know, you can take things out that didn't work in the games. You can put things in that'll really work, because now's your chance to tell a story. Video games like The Last of Us have such a big world and these characters that you only get to spend like, you know, like 7, 8, 9, 10 hours with, and you want to know more. You can see, and that's kind of like what we're seeing. We see their day-to-day stuff. We see how it's going, the brutality of this world and how cruel it is, and we see it now in you know, through this real life scenario of like real actors, and it's incredible. So I'm happy that this is working, and I would love to see the rest like right now. I wish they would pull a Netflix and just show everything, but you know how the internet is. Someone's gonna watch all of it or go to the last episode, screenshot stuff, put it up, and you know, it's gonna get out there. So I get it. And plus, you know, if HBO Max, you know, did that, then they, or Paramount Plus, whatever it is, I think it's HBO Max, but like, you know, if you do that, people will just cancel their subscriptions like that. Like, you know, it's like, okay, I just finished these episodes, I'm done. I won't need it until the show comes back again. 'Cause, you know, Disney Plus kind of had that problem with The Mandalorian. But either way, again, I'm excited for this. But the real question is, what are you guys thinking about this show right now? Are you liking it? Are you hoping that it does well? Do you not like it? Let me know down in the comments below. So, with that being said, please thumbs up and subscribe, because it's free. In this day and age, free is a damn good thing. As always, everybody, thank you for watching. I'm One Big Boss, and I will see you all next time. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. If you could give this video a thumbs up and a share, helps the channel out big time. Give me a follow on Twitter and Discord, where I'm most active. Links down below in the description. Also, I stream on Twitch, so if you'd like to see me play a bunch of new to retro games, well, click down below, give it a follow, greatly appreciate it. Till next time, guys, be safe and have a good one.